Today in Roach Reflections, I want to talk about the approach to the swim. It's very easy to just go along the bank. You've got a swim in mind, plonk down your box, start bashing down the reeds, mixing up ground bait and fishing away. And in doing so, you might have just scared away half of the roach in your swim, if not all of them, and cut down your chances of a big one by 99%. Dick Walker once said that when he was learning to fish, and he was only about 6 or 7 or certainly very young, his grandfather used to take him fishing on the Lee for roach. And he said, imagine that the fish is there in front of you in the river with a gun, and if he sees you or detects you, he'll shoot you. Now, that's not quite true. But the thing was, by approaching really quietly on what was a very hard fish piece of river, and we're talking, the 1920s, I suppose, he had a better chance of catching big roach. And they are shy fish. There are times when roach throw caution to the wind. You can pull them out on heavy gear. They're queuing up. You just can't go wrong. But the people who do best with roach in the long term are the quiet anglers. You need gentle feet, basically. No thumping along with great big boots. And when you're fishing, you keep your feet still. You don't constantly move them around. You don't stamp your feet because they're getting cold. If your feet are cold and you think you need to warm up, then walk very quietly away from your swim and do your hard marching well away from where you're fishing. So looking at that swim again, come in. If you are going to sit on a box, put it down really quietly, keep low, get it set up. If you've got extending legs, nice and quietly. Sort out your ground bait, your bait, a bait stand maybe, and see if you can get away with not knocking the reeds down. If they're not in your way and you can fish around them quietly. If you have to break one or two, just quietly snap them, just down. That's all you need to do. It's not difficult. I don't want to upset any carp anglers, but one of my pet hates on still waters is when people turn up in the next swim and they're carp fishing and they're going to set up a bivvy, and the first thing that comes out is a mallet. There is no need for mallets on fishing waters, and the moment you start banging away on a mallet, every fish, never mind the roach, the carp, scarper, they're alerted. They're not going to feed for a very long time. And carp, as much as roach, can be caught with stealth and craftiness far easier than scaring the living daylights out of them first before you start fishing. So you'll never see me with a mallet banging in bank sticks or anything else like that. I stopped using a keep net 8 years ago now. It's coming up, and that's one less thing to plonk into the water to scare the fish away. I catch more roach because I don't use a net, not less roach, which may seem odd. But roach that are caught, put in a net, bashed around, crammed into someone's landing net for a catch shot, do you really need to do that? I don't think so. Well, actually, I've never done it because I've done 1 or 2 features quite a few years ago, and the journalists concerned, oh yeah, we've got to put them in a landing net to do it. You don't need that for Facebook though. Leave the keep net at home. If you catch a nice fish, just take a picture of that one. What more do you need? One nice perfect roach going back. Just the job. Do you really need a catch shot where you hold up 2 or 4? Who cares? At the end of the day, fishing's just for the here and now, the pleasure of it and enjoyment. So if you put them back in pretty much as good a condition as you caught them, they're not going to remember being caught. When they're bashed around in a net, that imprints on their memory far, far more than just being gently slipped back not that many seconds after they were first hooked. and they may even start feeding again later in the same day. But ones that have been in a net probably won't feed for a week or two, and they're certainly harder to catch. One good example of frightening fish that I always remember was back in the late 70s. We used to fish a friendly match, Wareham against Dorchester clubs, on the Upper Stour up near Child Oakford, a stretch of water we've no longer got access to. And it's typical Upper Stour, it's sort of bendy and there are pools and runs, lots of reed beds, overhanging trees. I think it's far more overgrown now because it probably hasn't been fished for about 20 odd years, or at least not most of it hasn't. But back then I realised, and we're talking the late 70s, that on that Upper Stour where 3 or 4 pounds was enough to make the prizes, that there was often a chub in your swim when you got there, and if you were quiet enough you might catch it in the first couple of minutes of the match. And these chub weren't very big, they might be 6 ounces, 8 ounces, a pound maybe. There were bigger ones, but they were rarely caught, and there weren't that many of them up there then. And this one particular day I got to my swim and it was nice and quiet there, and I tackled up 20 yards from the water, moved my gear in very, very quietly. And then I thought, if I leave this swim alone till the start of the match, which is another half an hour, it'll be undisturbed. And if I did frighten any fish in that tackling up phase and putting the gear in place, they'd have a chance to come back. So I went off looking for the next angler downriver, and he was about 80 or 100 yards downriver, quite a long way away from me. And he was busy hacking down every reed in sight along the edge of the bank, because he was worried about tangling. He wasn't fishing for our team. And I asked him very much tongue-in-cheek, I said, do you ever get any chub along here? He said, oh, I've never had a chub along here. I get the odd dace and gudgeon, but that's about it. And I thought, well, I don't think you're going to catch many. No wonder you don't catch chub. You frightened the life out of everything, the chub and the roach. And at the start of the match, I'd got back to my swim very quietly, and I did catch a chub about 6 or 7 ounces first cast, but it was a start to the match. It got me underway. I don't remember what I caught eventually. I don't think I did that well, but it was a flying start to get a few ounces in the net before we got going. And of course, at the end of the match, I went to see how my neighbour had got on, and he'd not caught very much at all. A couple of gudgeon. I think he'd frightened the life out of everything. And there was just no need for what he was doing. If he'd sat there quietly, he might have caught a good chub early on. Some bits of river I fish are quite busy. There's public footpaths with people dog walking and just walking, and seem to be a lot of photographers around. And the fish, to a certain extent, get used to that traffic on the bank, compared to, say, parts of the Upper Stour where it's private farmland, there's no one on the bank, and you just don't get disturbed. It's a different story there. So if a couple of people did walk along the bank, it would probably scare the fish for half an hour. But on these public bits, often the best way is to fish a bit further out. Don't try and fish very close in, because there's too much disturbance, and you've got no control what a dog walker does. Hopefully they won't let their dogs in the river, but don't count on it. Occasionally you get someone who thinks it's all right to chuck a ball in about 15 yards away from you. But just keep your patience and explain that could they keep at least 100 yards if they really must put their dog into the water. Just tell them about being fined for disturbing an otter. A bit tongue-in-cheek there. The overall message today is that don't frighten the fish, and you've got a better chance of catching them. Big roach can be very, very cautious in feeding. They can take hours to come on. Yesterday I fished on a local still water. We're under these COVID restrictions, so I was very, very local. And there were very, very few people wandering around where I was fishing. And the fish still took, I think the first fish I caught at all was a tiny perch, about like that. Maybe that's not very big. And that took 5 minutes, but the first roach was nearly an hour, about half a pound. And then I had a much better roach about half an hour after that went 110, and that was worth the wait. But it was patience and quietness. I didn't get a lot after that. It got a very nice brace of rudd, about a pound each, which was very nice to see. And there wasn't a lot of sign of life of fish out there, but it was fishing quietly again. Just sat on my box, feeding quietly, casting quietly. Didn't get up and stump around. Didn't bang any tent pegs in. Much better chance of catching fish. And I was fishing well out, fishing about 20 yards out on a waggler. And sometimes that distance, it definitely helps. So overall, keep quiet. Don't bang your feet around. Don't stomp heavily. When you are fishing, keep your feet still if you can. Net fish quietly, slip them back quietly. And hopefully you'll get some good roach sport. Not just now, but in the future. Please click like and subscribe. And that's cheerio from me for now.